and debate. But I'm delighted to introduce our two co-rapporteurs. And first, Anna Maria Corazza Bildt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Claude. And let me say how happy I am to have with us today in this hearing the Slovak presidency and the UN representative also, because it's really important that we join forces across institutions. And last week's resolution that we initiated together with Christine, it was joint resolution from different political groups, cross-nationality. A very wide majority of the Parliament supported it, and that's been a very encouraging step forward. And I'm happy that the Commission took it as a boost to move forward in the proposal of the EU accession to the Convention, and also to get the Member States to ratify. There are 14 Member States that have not yet ratified, I'm sorry to say, including the Presidency, and also to implement it. So what are we talking about? We are talking about Tiziana, is a young woman who committed suicide because they were spreading intimate sexual pictures of her on the social media. She tried and tried to remove them, and she couldn't. It was another woman, another young woman, who was raped in a toilet in a disco. She was drunk. Her friends put the pictures on the social media, and also she couldn't stand it. And there are so many of these stories. There are so many of these stories, and every of these stories is a broken life. It's a trauma. It's suffering. And I would like to say that in the social media, it's a new pandemic that is happening. It's a global phenomenon that is adding to the fact that at home, women are still beaten. In Seveso, the 25th of November, that was the day of the international fight against violence against women. A woman was strangled by her husband in front of two small kids. Feminicide is happening today in Europe. And in public places also. We have women that feel in danger when they go to swimming pools, because in the bathroom they could be raped. They are afraid to go to musical festivals because in a tent they could be raped 24/7. So violence against women is not a private issue. It is a serious crime, and it is widespread. I visited shelters in Greece, actually very good shelters that are funded by the European Union. I visited shelters in Sweden. I want to congratulate a lot of heroes in the civil society that are taking hand in hand these women and girls that were forced to flee their homes because they were threatened their life and the children's lives. They are helping them to recover a dignity. It is a way back to life, to dignity, and to also go back to normal life. And really time has come to say no to sexism, to build a culture of respect. That's what it is about, of women and girls, to combat stereotypes. And religion and culture can never be an excuse to oppress women. I also would like to say that violence against women require an effort also with our migrants, to tell them that they should respect our laws. But I would like clearly to say here that I was outraged last week in plenary with some of our colleagues from the extreme right, reduced the entire problem of violence against women that existed in Europe over the centuries by white men to a migration problem. This stigmatization of migrants is unacceptable. I want to say it loud and clear. I also would like to say, Mr. Chairman, that in this vast majority last week in Parliament, who is it that voted against or abstained on preventing, combating violence against women, on protecting the victims? The extreme right, including, by the way, the Swedish Democrats. I'm sorry to say, because that's a shame on Sweden. And what are the reasons? Let me look at it. What is it that emerged in this debate last week? I think it's important that we don't just blame and shame the 40 member states that didn't adhere to the convention. Let's look at what it is. It is a lot of ideology. We have been asking Grevio, who is the Council of Europe, I remind everybody that the Istanbul Convention is not the EU imposing on member states, it's a Council of Europe. It's not EU legislation, it's the Council of Europe Convention. It is the first international legal act that criminalizes violence. And again, it's been kidnapped by populist extreme right ideology based on what we asked the Council of Europe to tell us what they think. The Grevio is the expert group of the Council of Europe on violence against women. They are looking member state by member state. Those that has ratified, where are the reservations? And those that have not ratified, why they have not ratified. And we call on the Commission to start a comprehensive, structured, continuous dialogue with the member states. Because I can understand that there are problems with the interpretation of the Convention on the issue of compensation, on the issue of residence that was mentioned before, on the issue of status of limitation. And let's talk about it openly. Please don't hide your reservations. Come out in a dialogue. We have to deal with them. But I have a more difficulty, Mr. Chairman, to understand the ideological opposition to the Convention, which is based on the definition of gender. Let's read what the Convention says. I will be very quick, but I really want to go to the bottom of that. Gender shall mean the socially constructed roles, behavior, activities and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for women and men. Some people consider that this is a wrong definition, that opened the way to be anti-Christian, anti-Catholic, anti-family. And honestly, to me, it looks much more like an abuse of interpretation, once again, to discriminate LGBTIs. So if you think so, please take the debate, let's talk about it. Don't continue just to oppose without telling us why. We are ready for any debate, as tough as it is. But we need to do something against violence. It is about violence. Or is it more important with the wrong interpretation of ideology, as the Council of Europe said? Mr. Chair, I have to be frank here, because the debate last week in plenary, these issues were clear to me. And let me say also what the Convention says. Gender-based violence against women shall mean violence that is directed against a woman because she is a woman. And that affects women disproportionately. So what are we talking about? We're talking about men attacking women because of jealousy, because of revenge, because of impulse, because of frustration, because of alcohol. We're talking about men who don't accept a woman to be strong, to be independent, to be modern, to make her own choices, or to leave him. That's what we're talking about. So let's join forces. And we call on the member states in the resolution to implement the trafficking directive, to implement the protection order, to implement the directive on protection of victims, to ratify the convention, and to accelerate the accession of the convention by the EU. I'd just like to say, and finally, that we in the EPP, together with Barbara Matera, who is a rapporteur in the LIBE, we will continue to be committed on zero tolerance against violence against women. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.